Okay. All right, welcome everyone to the first meeting of 2025 of the Economic Development Commission. Begin with the approval of the draft minutes of the December 6, 2024 meeting. Entertain a motion to approve those. Anybody?
So moved.
Bueller?
Can't do it.
Second.
Okay. Any corrections or comments, additions, deletions?
Just the one correction Andy caught, 24 to 25.
And that's under the,
It's under the
Working
Economic
group.
Resilience Working Group.
yep. Okay. All right. Subject to that correction, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Next item is the annual election of the chair and vice chair. This is required under the ordinance, and as you know, we adopted a term limit 4 years ago, and we have not exceeded that limit yet for this year, so I will entertain motions. We'll begin with the chair, entertain motions to, for someone to serve as chair during 2025.
I would like to nominate Thomas Watson.
Thomas Watson, wow.
Out of the blue.
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
have thought.
Who is that? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, I'll close the nominations, and I'll dispense with asking for nominating speeches and call the question. All in favor of electing Mr. Watson as chair?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, for vice chair, I'll accept motions to, or nominations of somebody to serve in that position.
I would like to nominate Sarah LaChance.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Excellent. Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll close the nominations and call the question. All in favor of Mr. LaChance as vice chair?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next is our report from Sean on the Office of Economic Development.
Great. Good morning. Happy New Year, everyone. Just a quick update from what we talked about in December. The Grow Lab CRM is up and running, and was able to share a demo with the city manager last week. So it's in place as a two-way communication tool. You remember it has a lot of bells and whistles, but the function right now is to be in the two-way communication with our business community. So a lot more to come on that. Anthony from Grow Lab will be in the office here this afternoon, and I'll be able to roll out a plan to you all in terms of how that's going to seep out into the marketplace and what I'd be looking for from support from the EDC. Probably closer to our annual retreat, but it is up and running.
Sean, that name has a whole different connotation in Southern Maine.
Grow Lab? Oh.
When you said that, I said, what?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, the good news is it is fully integrated, I think you might recall, to my email. So it's coming from my office. It's coming from the
Sean, you don't need to say
city of
anymore.
Port.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions on the tool and where we're at? And yeah, a lot more to come, but basically it is functioning as requested. I mentioned the intern that we have working in the Economic Development Office. We've completed 3 weeks out of the 5-week internship, and she's get a lot of information, a lot of firsthand conversations with folks who use the rail trail. So users of the rail trail, she's been reaching out to other states, other areas on what works in terms of connecting that type of an attraction to the business community. So that's on track, and you'll hear more about that at the end of January as well. Third thing, I printed an article on the labor market that came out yesterday from Brian Gottlieb, who does work for the state of New Hampshire. Just really talking about, he doesn't see a change in the labor market in terms of the tightness of it. So our employers are going to have the same issues, at least for the first half of 2025, that they've been experiencing for the last couple of years in terms of low unemployment, challenges with housing, and all the good things that we know about. Yeah, and I just wanted to let you know that the Market Square Master Plan, there's a working session Monday, January 6th at 6 o'clock for those of you that are interested in being there. And I believe there's going to be a working session, or at least a presentation from the parking study group, the consultant, later in January, if not maybe early February.
Right.
So the 21st is the next council meeting, January 21st?
Yeah, but it's a Tuesday because of the...
Tuesday, right? And then after that, February 3rd. So if you're interested in being there for the parking presentation, just pay attention to that, and I'll be sure to let you know as I see it on the agenda. That's really all I have. I know Ben's got a big update from the chamber, so I'll stop there, Tom. Any
Okay,
questions?
great. Concerning the Grow Lab, I hope we all sort of keep that in mind when we are at the planning workshop, because whatever topics we choose to go with this year, I'd like to see if we can incorporate that function now that was originally part of our concept
Right.
last year, but took a while to refine. All right, Andy, would you like to say anything on
Yeah, I can be quick. And the meeting minutes kind of covered the business support group. I think we're going to kind of have open minds and open ears at our retreat and take on our next tasks from that. So we have not met since this last meeting. So nothing new to report there.
This could be a short meeting. Ann?
Well, nothing really new since
Say
the
ditto.
last meeting. We agreed, because so many entities are all looking at public transportation, there needs to be some sort of unification of efforts rather than one group meeting at the library and us meeting here and parking and traffic safety, having other conversations. I think there were 8 or 9 groups on my list of people that are all doing the same thing. So we're looking to put together some sort of recommendation that will go to council to unify the conversation in some way, which I have not drafted. That business got in the way.
I wasn't going to ask that, so,
I had good intentions, and it just didn't get there.
okay. Now, do you need help with that?
I would love some sort of a little template or something of how does that read. So yes,
All right,
yes, I'd love help.
okay. Well, let's talk
Up on that
offline.
wagon.
If anybody else wants to volunteer to assist in that, I think we can put something together.
Great, thank you.
Anything else you want to add, or?
No, that sort of wraps it, I think.
Okay. When we get to talking about the planning for the session, for the workshop, I'd like your input on whether you think that these 2 working groups are the working groups, or whether they should be changed, to refocus their mission, or everything is fine. So I'm not talking about the members of them, but, the
Topics.
topic that we created. Okay. Ben,
Morning, everybody. Happy New Year.
morning.
Just wanted to share a little bit of anecdotal information from what we heard from the downtown retail community as far as the holiday season. This is purely anecdotal from really walking into shops and talking to. I try to look for business owners that have been there for a long time and worked really hard to stay relevant. So I think of like G. Willikers as a good little litmus test of like how the holidays are doing. And what I heard from folks was that it was busy. No one shattered any records or anything like that, but overall people were generally pleased with how it went. and that it seemed pretty busy. So, kind of a good report there. I think people were happy to see a lot of effort from the chamber and the city to promote retailers and the shop local events that we did after the shop and stroll after the parade and things like that. Also want to just give a thank you to the city. The railroad threw a wrench in the works in December and decided to shut down Market Street and 6 days to Christmas, whatever. And the city really did amazing work to get the Maplewood Bridge reopened, and that kind of saved the day, I think, for that. And so they deserve a tremendous amount of appreciation and thanks. And not blame, which happened a little bit, but it was completely out of their control. Trust me, we tried at all levels of government to change that, but apparently the railroad does what the railroad wants. So, but that's just worthy thanks. Update on tourism. There's some big, relatively good-sized grants that the state has received for tourism. They were federal funds through the Economic Development Agency to help the tourism industry respond after COVID. So there's a few $1 million in the state's activities right now to help support tourism. Some of that's going to be spent on workforce development and recruitment efforts. Some of that will be spent on some local, what they like to call asset collections. So they're going to have $1.5 million out there in the state for to hire videographers and photographers and things like that to capture imagery of destinations in the state. So Portsmouth's going to be high on that list, along with the lakes and the White Mountains and our other destinations in the state. The great thing for us is that is very expensive work to have done, right? We don't really have the bandwidth to do that much of that locally, but all these assets the state is gathering will be made available to us as a chamber, will be made available to the city as the city. Really anyone can kind of plug into this library. It's going to be an online platform of library for us to download these videos and photos and allow us to do some great marketing with some of that work, some of those tools. So we're really excited about that. It's a very tight time period. That firm was selected and approved by Governor and Council in December. We're meeting next week, and they have until September to spend that money. So it'll be a very quick 3-season push to get as much as we can out of that. So it will miss fall, but we're going to take what we can get. So we're excited about that. As Sean mentioned, we have a very busy January, and there's lots to share. And I think Sean shared or has a copy of some things. There's lots of ribbon cuttings going on. There's all sorts of events going on. I'll draw your attention to just a few things. One, many of you have already RSVP'd, but on the 14th of January, we're going to be hosting our elected officials reception. That'll be upstairs in the new rooftop pavilion space of Novacure. So cool space to come check out if you haven't been to Novacure yet, or at least been upstairs to that new space yet. We'll be the first group in there. That is a 4:30 to 6:30 event. We've invited our federal delegation, our state reps, and executive counselors and things like that to attend that event. So hopefully you can join us for that. I know many of you already are. The 16th, 2 days later, is the Local Love for January, the Shop Local Night. And we also have an event at Puddle Dock Skate. Our party at Puddle Dock, we like to call it. It's our one kind of family-friendly event where the business community brings kids and family and come and just skate, and it's all, there's a price to get there, but there's food, and there's hot cocoa bar, and there's free skate rentals and all of that. So join us for that. It's just a fun evening. And then also of interest, and I know a few people are planning to attend this, we are hosting our annual tourism summit at the end of the month on the 28th. That will be in the terminal at the airport at Pease. And they have done a lot to that facility, so if you haven't been to that airport in a while, there's a new arrivals hall, which is quite nice. That's pretty fresh. The terminal is just a few years old still, so that facility is coming along quite a bit. So the Tourism Summit will feature a variety of speakers throughout the morning, including the brand new state tourism director, will be joining us, and then we're going to have a session on the rail trail and what that means for visitation and usage, and we're going to talk about that with some folks from the state down to the local folks, and our own Parks and Rec director will be there to talk about the skate park and sort of access and egress from the rail trail and some of the stuff happening over there, and then a few other speakers after that to talk about a variety of different things. So that's going to be a great morning on the 28th, and then in early February, I'll just mention that we have our second Celebrate Her luncheon, which is our celebration of our female business leaders. That'll be at where is that? I think that's at the AC on the 5th of February. Might have that wrong. Yeah. Stated steady somewhere. I think that's my update. I'm happy to answer any questions or anything like that. Like I said, lots of events, lots of ribbon cuttings. Please join us for any of those. Good stuff going on.
So Ben, if somebody wants to go to, for instance, the legislative reception, they need to reach out to you?
Just let me know. Yeah. We just like to have a count. We do have a kind of capacity thing for that space. There's only about 120 people. We have plenty of room at this point. I think we have about 50 people signed up. So let us know.
And I think you distributed last time around, or in November, the Chamber's legislative priorities.
I think that was the 24 version of that document. So the 25 version of that document was just approved by the Chambers Board at the December board meeting. It will be shared at that meeting at the elected official reception on the 14th. Not a whole big change from last year to this year. Some tweaks and some updates there. But that is the other big thing that we are focused on is things are definitely ramping up in Concord in the legislature. We are, our committee and other trade organizations that we're a part of are tracking a lot of legislation. There's like 1,400 pieces of legislation or something ridiculous like that right now. And trying to get, obviously the big thing this year is going to be the budget and getting that approved. And that's going to be the big focus of everything, because it's going to be a very challenging budget year for the state.
Vince, go ahead.
Yeah, I see Stonewall Kitchen is closing.
Yeah.
Their location, I hate to see that. One more empty space. What is the status of empty space in downtown at this point? Do you have a handle on that?
Bob may be a better person to respond to that than me.
There are a few vacancies, restaurant vacancies, but there are new people coming in too. So I think, the downtown is pretty small, pretty contained. So when you see 2 or 3 vacancies, it looks like a lot. Mm-hmm. But I think generally, it's just the process that downtown goes through, especially when prices are going up.
Yeah.
I don't know about Stonewall per se. I hear the rent went up, but who knows?
Yeah.
What really happened there? The restaurant industry is a little different. It's very challenging these days. It's harder to make money, and staff is an issue. So all those things contribute.
Yeah. Oh, good.
You go ahead.
So, Councilor, we've been looking at, we understand there's some large spaces, and some of them have reasons, whether it's the brewery being for sale or whether it's Lazy Jack's on the river being for sale. There's things that are happening, but we are looking at internally how in inspections we can be supportive and work with property owners or folks who are looking to get into spaces. But I would agree with Bob's comments. Some of the smaller ones are turning over. And you do have, I did in that article about Stonewall Kitchen, they talked about they were going to let folks know more information. But at the end of the day, you have people's businesses that are changing. Earth Eagle Brewing is another example, right? They've decided to focus on their northern location, I guess in Somersworth, and consolidate. Another one that just was in the paper yesterday, Smutty Nose Brewing in Hampton. I know it's not Portsmouth, but they have merged with Harpoon Brewing out of Massachusetts, and right now they're shutting down their lines in Hampton. So I feel like there's a lot of businesses retooling. They've gotten through 2024. What are they seeing in 2025? What are their business plans telling them? So hopefully, as we're working more with folks and communicating more, we'll have more of that information. But I would agree. Some of the smaller spaces are turning. Some of the larger spaces aren't going to turn if property owners don't want to come down with price. That's kind of the bottom line. And the other piece, just to wrap on the restaurants, is what the pattern we've seen, and I think we've talked about it here, is if you're an independent restaurant, one-off, funky, you got a great idea, it's hard to get the scale of the larger restaurant groups, whether it's Portsmouth Hospitality or the Labrie Group. They have that scale to be able to fill spaces pretty quickly, versus you going in, with sweat equity and trying to deal with, our prices, really. So.
Mr. Chair. Something I've been thinking about with regard to the open spaces, and something I've talked to Sean about, and I've asked Sean to start baking a cake with Ben, would be creating a forum or a sort of a dialogue session where Shanti Wolf, our inspector, could explain what our perspective is and sort of dispel some of the myths as to why some of the spaces are held up or not moving along, so to speak, because I think he can lend a lot of credibility and new thinking, or just shed light on things that can and cannot happen in spaces versus what people think might be the case. So if there's a way to sit around, some place like the Music Hall Lounge and have that conversation and allow Shanti to talk about what he's seeing and the communication he's having with not only the business owners but the property owners about what can and cannot be done.
Yeah, and what I'll just build on that, Karen, is Shanti's got some good examples of success stories. And one of them is 909 Islington, right, where you've got Chinburg going in and investing, where you have a restaurant that's going to be opening in the West End, and that took a lot of work between the city and the developer and things of that nature. So there's some good examples, but it would be great to illustrate that for others to understand how we are supporting that, and maybe give people an idea that they can work with the city to make something happen that they didn't think was possible.
That's the Louis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which building is that?
It's 909 Islington. It's
It's loaded
question is the far left end.
Garage, WSCA radio.
Yeah.
And there was a change of ownership.
Yes.
That was bought by Chinburg.
That's the difference.
And brought on partially due to enforcement issues that the city brought.
Yeah.
My observation from talking with people is that there's 3, 4, 5 sort of high-profile places that have been around for 20 or 30 years and almost have emotional attachment to them, like River Run's going to disappear, Starbucks disappeared, now, the Stonewall Kitchen, and there's another one that I heard, and people are responding to that. That's driving all the social media comments. And of course, everybody blames it on high prices in the downtown area, but it's those bigger spaces that appear to be tied into a desire to change ownership that create the big gaps. Although I don't know what the deal with the old Shanley building, why that one's sitting empty for so long.
I could talk for a while about that. I won't.
But it would be, a forum is a good idea, I think, particularly to help, if we can use that as an opportunity to get out to the general public, not just to the owners of the buildings or downtown businesses. I'm also interested in seeing what happens with the rents and the amount of space that's open once all these new buildings in the north end start opening up and they got first floors.
Right.
Without any tenants, as far as I know at this point. Look how long it took
Corlock Place.
the furniture place.
Oh, yeah.
Circle Furniture.
Cabot House?
Yeah, what?
Circle Furniture.
No, Circle Furniture, yeah.
On
Deer Street.
Deer, no,
Not Deer.
Ridge.
Ridge Street.
Bridge Street, yeah. I mean, that sat empty for probably 3 years, right? So,
At least.
okay. Other questions of Ben? Okay. All right. Vince, you want to lead us in an
Yeah,
update?
I have to tell you, the time between the last council meeting and today has been like a whirlwind. I really had to think about what's going on. But I think of note Just the fact that Peter Laughlin retired from the Trees and Greenery Committee, had chaired for, I've lost the number of years, but
I think it's counted in decades.
decades, yeah. That's, well, he was just an amazing guy to do that, so we'll miss him there. We have an opportunity with the state revolving fund for 100% principal forgiven grant to, it's not really a grant, a loan, I guess, to study the sludge minimization and PFAS destruction, actually. I haven't heard of any PFAS destruction before, and I think it's a credit to Portsmouth that we've been kind of leading the challenge on PFAS remediation. I've talked to other cities in other states about what they're doing about PFAS, and they say, "What's PFAS?" You know, and so you know, Portsmouth is pretty ahead of the curve on that, and I think I feel pretty proud of what's happened here with that. We're looking at first reading of the zoning to minimize the rules around accessory dwellings in terms of dimensions and you know, distances to the edge of property, things like that. You mentioned the master plan, Market Square master plan. There's also a municipal building committee that's being formed and is going to look at this building and actually all the municipal buildings, and in part with an eye to resolve something for the police department, but also just looking at it in a broader view. And then I guess the last thing on my list I have is the volunteer training manual is coming before the city council. I haven't seen the agenda yet for tonight or Monday, but I think we're going to have a first reading of that. It's a pretty comprehensive redo of the training manual, the standards of conduct, ethics policy, combining that into kind of one document that is for all volunteers, city boards, and staff. And I mean, it's a comprehensive document. So I don't know, anything else?
Can I just add a couple things to that?
Certainly can.
The city in December was designated one of the handful of cities in the state as a housing champion, which recognizes the work we have done and gives us priority access to some grant funds to keep working on our housing efforts, which is great. There was a great article about Paul Breen and the PDA's success recently in the paper, so check that out. As of New Year's Eve, we have officially obligated all $12.88 million of our ARPA funding, which was a big effort over many years, wonderful effort, and we all learned a lot, and we got it all spent. So things you'll see in 2025 that will be tangible will include a bookmobile that will, it's an all-electric vehicle that will come around. That was one of the last things, along with an EV bike charging station. And in addition to the Market Square master plan, which we're going to talk about on Monday, we are due for a citywide master plan, which will be informed by all the great planning work we have done in the last couple of years. And we are close. We have run a process and selected a firm with whom we are negotiating a contract right now. So as soon as we are done with that, we will get to announce them and get to announce the schedule of meetings and rollout. And we're really excited about that because of all the firms, and we got a lot of interest in our RFP, RFQ. We're really excited, and the group that reviewed had consensus around the one firm that we feel will really do a good job for Portsmouth. So more to come on that.
Will there be a citizens committee similar to what happened with the Market Square master plan process?
I am sure, some sort of steering committee, something like that,
Yeah.
yep, that will involve a majority of citizens.
Okay. What would be the opportunities for people to participate in that?
That's a good question. I would imagine that'll come under the mayor's name at an upcoming meeting, maybe early February.
Okay.
But rest assured, John and I will be pushing for and suggesting an EDC representative.
That'd be great, yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody has any interest in that, would you let me know? And I'll make sure it gets to Karen. Okay. Any questions of Vince or Karen? Okay. One follow-up to Ben's report on the railroad crossing. I noticed that it wasn't just a crossing. It looks like they've laid new rails throughout the entire yard. Has there been any suggestion from CFX that they're going to increase the activity?
They've been open and honest about saying they will increase
will.
activity. And once they modernize the antiquated infrastructure they purchased, inherited, pick your word. But in and amongst the work, the city took advantage of the shutdown and the road opening to put in a water sleeve, which essentially protects and upgrades a really critical piece of very old infrastructure that the city owned. So we took advantage of this opportunity and saved a couple $100,000 and another road shutdown. So really quick thinking on the part of some excellent DPW staff, some of whom will be honored Monday night for that.
Great. Okay. All right. So let's talk about our planning workshop. And so I wanted to sort of share my thoughts and then open it up for your thoughts on how we should approach this. As we discussed back in December, and I think even in November, the hope this year is to not repeat the process that we used last year, which was I like to think of the spaghetti approach, just throw it against the wall and see what sticks. So instead of spending a lot of time brainstorming for new ideas or new questions or observations, and then trying to then consolidate those under different headings and ultimately develop some action items from that, I'm hoping that we can go directly to trying to come up with the action items and the deliverables for this year. So I put all this in my email to you all back on December 23rd, and I received, and I asked if anybody had any thoughts that could be added to the notes from last year's session as our starting point document. I did hear from Ben on an initiative. I've taken the liberty of putting this in.
It's a pretty rough draft. Disseminating it, all right.
Take the liberty.
All right, sure.
I basically just cut and pasted this from his email into a Word document. But again,
Yeah, that'll.
and so I will add this to our starting point. And I know I asked for responses back by New Year's Eve, but if anybody did not have an opportunity to respond to my email and got something in mind, now would be a great time. What I will do is whatever we have, I'll send it to you electronically before that meeting, but I'm interested if you have any thoughts. I will add that I had a conversation with the mayor back in late November, and he had one concept, and I've asked him for clarification, but I haven't had an opportunity to connect with him, so I won't share that with you until I hear back from him, and he decides what he wants us to do or whether he wants us to pursue it. But any additional substantive areas before we talk about process?
feel like I'd like to see those big sheets of paper we had up on the wall last year to refresh our.
I think they're summarized in the minutes that were sent out.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like, yes, that those happened somewhere.
No, they're actually hanging in her bedroom, I'm sure.
I may have the actual pictures, Ann, still on my phone if you want me to look.
Just some of my thoughts on it. Well, actually, I should say that I've asked Jen if she would be the facilitator for this, taking over the function that Sarah did last year, and she's graciously agreed to do that. As you may know, this is right in her wheelhouse. This is how she makes a living, so I'm pretty excited about an opportunity to ratchet it up, and I'm sure she would be interested in hearing any thoughts you might have as to how we can go about doing things on the workshop, what you thought worked, what you thought didn't work last time around. Happy to hear them now, or if you want to share them with her, you can communicate directly with her. But I'm going to leave it to her to actually use her professional experience to help us congeal there on the 24th. Yeah, anything you want to add to that?
I was going to say, yeah, I'd love the congealing to begin, if appropriate. But the thing I'm most curious about is the outcome of the meeting, right? So what is it that we want to walk away from the meeting and have be true? Right, so not necessarily our goals or our but like, what is the thing? What's the reason we're even doing this? Like, at the end of it, what's it for? What is the actual reality at the end of our 3 hours together as a vision for what this time, how this time will be well spent? That's what I'm most interested in hearing about, because I think the process, like how to get there, how to use the 3 hours of time, I can figure that out. But I think if we have a sense of our shared outcomes for what the purpose of that time is, what do we really want to have accomplished in that time, that would be the most helpful for me to understand.
Anybody have any?
So just a question. I know we had 5 goals that came to us as the city council goals from their retreat last year. You don't have another retreat this year, right? It's at the beginning of your term, or am I wrong?
We've been talking about having something just to look at it, but I think our goals are pretty similar to what they were last year.
I guess that's my question.
Another
I always
retreat
feel
for
like
the council.
we're like a support arm for research for council, and knowing are your 5 goals from last year the goals we should be kind of reviewing again?
The history has been that we have held a retreat at the beginning of a term, so we wouldn't do it this
Yeah.
January. So the goals would stay as they were, unless the council chose to change them.
I mean, none of our goals have been completely addressed. They're ongoing goals.
It was
So,
housing and transportation and
Yeah,
many
yeah.
more.
Sustainability and
yeah.
transparency and communication, community engagement.
Bob?
Yeah, I think our retreat or planning sessions have been trying to get us to focus on, one, understanding kind of who we are as a board, how we fit into the city, and how we interact with the city council, and just trying to identify those areas where we think we can be effective and help assist the city manager, the city council, and it's just trying to figure out where we're going and what we're going to do this year. So otherwise, we just kind of float and react and don't get anything accomplished. So that's why we ended up with a couple committees or subcommittees or whatever we are.
Working groups.
Yeah, working groups. right.
Working group.
So anyway, see if we can sort of identify what's going on in the city, with the city council, and how we can best help. And there may be things that we can't work on because we don't know, we wouldn't be effective, but, there are things there are areas where we can.
Karen, as city manager, do you set goals for the year?
When the council sets their goals, the organization has goals that carry over year to year. We tweak those sometimes. They're largely fiscally related and more about implementing the policies that the city council wants to see.
Okay,
So yes and no.
sort of, yeah.
I guess I would look to the city councilors maybe for feedback on some of the output that we delivered as a body to it over the course of the year, to see if that was a good interaction tool from the council's perspective, or if, I think we've talked about other ways of engaging, during council meetings or otherwise. I know there's always full agenda, so if that's been a helpful tool, if we should just, for us to understand what do we think our output should look like, good feedback to come to the table with.
Yeah, I would say, I immediately think of the work you did on outdoor dining and how important that was to both the staff and the council. It really helped shape that program. The transportation thing, that's, that initiated here, but it was also initiated in multiple places just because I think there's a general understanding that that's something that we have to deal with. But yes, the feedback is that it's an important tool. This is an important tool for the council.
I think on that point, it might be good to do a brief retro on the effectiveness of what we completed last year, both from the working groups. Things always take longer than we think they're going to, so did we bite off the right type of work, the right size of work? I think the other focus on targeting accomplishments for '24 might have made those accomplishments smaller than they should be. So does that mean that we are headed in the right direction, even if something takes more than a year? So I think talking about the type of work and the size of work, and Councilor Lombardi, when you talk about the outdoor dining as an effective use of the EDC, that was directly referred to from the council as opposed to what we're doing here, which is identifying solutions and bringing them forward. I think where we are most effective is when we have that direct relationship with the council and the council refers work to us. So perhaps for the retreat, you and Assistant Mayor Kelly could come with some ideas of where you think we could be effective as a tool to help support the council.
Yeah, I agree. It's great if we have a task from the city council. And I think what we talked about previously, in previous years, was just interacting with the council and letting them know what our goals are for the year, and, is it something that they feel is valuable? Because we could end up working on something that no one really cares about. So we didn't want that to happen.
I think it's less that no one cares and more that there are multiple groups working on the same thing.
Or just something that has no value to the council.
Other?
It would be piggybacking on all those ideas. It would be fantastic if there was a way to maybe add on to an existing city event or chamber event that the whole EDC and the whole council could be in one room for half an hour, and maybe a social and informal setting. I tend to run into the same councilors and the mayor, and the only time I see the whole council together is if I have a reason to be at a council meeting or it's election time and the city provides the candidate forums where you get to meet the candidates, those are great events. But it'd be great, and I'm not saying like a dedicated event. Maybe it could just be added on to an already existing event where those two groups might, or at least the council group might be there anyways. Just I don't know if that's possible, but it would be great for, I know it would be great for me, yeah.
Can I add to that? So when we would invite both groups to come together, we'd notice a quorum, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so we could take advantage of that, since we'll need to do that. You could have a work session hour
Right.
where there could be the good dialogue back and forth, and the public can join on Zoom, and there could be follow-up on that, and that could be carried back and forth by the assistant mayor and the counselor. But we have work sessions almost every other meeting. I think the council's receptive to work sessions. And we always have public comment at the end of every work session, so that might be an opportunity. It would be from 6 to 7 on a Monday.
I like that.
And we're embarking on the budget
We are?
right away. So, I mean, that, I don't know. That's a big job that we face every year, and maybe along that line, too.
That we would be involved in the budgeting process?
Input, I would think.
Okay. Phil?
Just one other thing, I think if we're going to start with a retro of the work we did this past year, I think aligning ourselves with the strategic priorities of the council would be just a great way for us to set the stage for the discussion. So just kind of outlining what those 5 things are, I think there's a pretty good sense of what that work consists of in the near term. So I think if there's anything that's in our work stream that falls within that, I'd say that's going to be a lot more relevant to the council, and maybe give them a sense of what assignments might be a good fit for us if we're talking about that. So
And Jen, I can send you the EDC action plans from the last 10 years if you're interested in seeing the topics. And
Can't wait.
So, which is why mining for new topics is less effective, because we always start with what are we going to do, and then we sort of narrow to the same few things. So I'll share that with you.
Well, so I think a little bit of what I'm hearing, though, is that we need to be aligned on our purpose. Is that what I'm hearing? Because it's sort of like, what are we doing? What are the actual, right? So I think if we reel back to the focus of what are we really here to do and start there, that would be a good place for us to just make sure we're all on the same page.
We also spent some time, was it 2 or 3 years ago, on the purpose when we revised the.
Yeah.
So we should, if you don't have that, we
Realign
should share
to
that
it,
as well.
Yeah. Well, and so let me add to that and see if I can be a little more direct in what I think the approach ought to be. So we did spend probably 3 of these retreats discussing what our role was, whether we should passively wait for a request from the city council or whether we could be more proactive in making suggestions to the council. And we came down on the latter, and in fact, we changed our ordinance. I think that was in 2023, and that was approved by the city council. So I don't think we have to spend a lot of time discussing that issue anymore. One of the observations about the process last year was, or this, 2024, was that, we came up with a lot of ideas, and then we created work groups, and then the work groups sat down, and they came up with what they thought would be projects, and then they brought them back to us, and then, so next thing you know, we were almost in May before we got started. So I think that I'd like to see us come out of this with our task, and I think we should have perhaps 4 or 5 items maybe prioritized, enough so that each working group would have something to start on right away, and if it turned out that didn't have enough legs, such as the CRM program because of the technical issues, that there was another one to go to right away instead of having to go back and crawl through the minutes of the ideas from the retreat and come up with another one. And so if we get request, or if the suggestion from the mayor plays out, then I think I don't want to say drop everything, but I think we have to be prepared to shift whatever our scheduling is for the year and include that in it, such as the outdoor dining. But in the absence of something like that, I think we should plan on having our plan of work by the end of January and then have the working groups get started on it right away in February. And so we are, we've got a deliverable by the end of the year. I think it is possible that there could be an item that would not be capable of being concluded within 2025, but I think we ought to identify that as a multi-year plan and then decide how we incorporate that into our. So from my perspective, we ought to be ready to make decisions, not just brainstorm. And that's one of the reasons I suggested that if one of the areas we decide to pursue, one of the initiatives, doesn't quite fit into the existing working group structure, we can just change that structure and create another one or replace it or reorient it, something like that. But I really see, I'd like to make sure that we're up and rolling on whatever we're doing in February instead of in May. So that's from my perspective.
Are we bringing those up right now, or are we talking about that in a couple weeks?
If you want to bring it up right now, we can. I mean, we've got plenty of time to have the conversation. But let's focus on. Do people feel that that's a good approach, or do we need to go back and have the discussion about, what we should be doing, or whether we should be trying to get more feedback from the city council, or should we be prepared to?
I think we should come in with that understanding, so we should probably gather whatever documentation we've put together in previous sessions, just to make sure everybody starts from the same page.
Yeah. I think we need to re-ground ourselves, and just my personal opinion as a participant, not a facilitator. It would be useful for me to feel re-grounded in our purpose and really understand what success looks like for the year. And then back into the initiatives from there, because we could get where we want to go in a million different ways. If we're not clear on where we want to go, that's what feels like is missing for me personally. To what end? Transportation, to what end? Like, who cares? So like for me personally, I want to kind of reignite the purpose, not necessarily revisit it and dig into it and dissect it and brainstorm around it, but reground ourselves as a team. I think the thing that stood out for me the most in Ben's proposal here is this piece of having a shared vision that is transformative and really positioning ourselves and knowing what value we can deliver in the context of all the other stuff that's happening in the city. Because I think without that shared vision, we're all going to keep running around like chickens with our heads cut off, right? So to me, I think it's important to ground in the vision and the purpose, and then back into the initiatives from there. I agree. I think whatever we walk away with should be actionable, almost immediately actionable. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Jacob?
It seems like we chatted a little bit about different technology pieces, and just that's like my wheelhouse. So I just didn't know if it was worth it to like have conversations around the technology bit, if we're really the research arm of city council having. I know we have the document library, we have a couple of other things, but I didn't know if it was worth it to have a conversation around the technology the city uses, that we use, that we could make it more transparent or just provide more information to more people. That was one thought. It seems we've had a couple things that came up today, but the only reason, because that's where I spend most of my time, is in technology. So that was one thought I had.
Can I jump into that? I think that would be great. I'd love to hear what private sector is doing, how we could benefit from that, and maybe we can share some of the, pull back the curtain, what our communications guy is doing, what our IT department is doing. It would be great to have that aired in conversation.
I still don't know how much power we have to I don't know what the outcome would be, I guess, from that. But it was just something that popped into my mind, I guess. But cool. All right.
Other comments? Questions? I had, in my December 23rd email, I had asked people to identify the documentation that we had last time around that they'd want to see again, because we gave a substantial amount of things. I think we had that whole library, that had to have been 15 to 20 documents in it. We didn't really refer to most of them, but I'm kind of hearing that maybe we ought to circulate the ordinance that has our mission incorporated into it, and I think there's like a 2-page city council goals that was adopted last year.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like those are still valid. So we'll make sure that those are circulated. Anything else from last year's material you want to see again? All right.
Can I just ask one more question? So part of, I think it would be useful to have some pre-work, not just maybe a review of documentation, but some actually like engaging with it. Would folks be open to a little bit of pre-work to lead up to this? Maybe like a survey that helps us all, like maybe input some of your thoughts, and then we can see some of the trends and themes ahead of time to be able to prepare. Would that be something that folks would be willing to do?
Sure.
All right, sweet.
A couple things I think we ought to think about when we're identifying a topic or an initiative is, how does it fit into our role and the policies that have been identified as important by the city council. Who else is doing this in the city? So we're not competing or diverting resources, so we don't run into what we ran into in the transportation thing. Or if somebody else is doing it, how can we coordinate with them instead of running parallel with them? What type of resources a project will entail? If it's something that's going to require a lot of time on Sean's part, then we've got to anticipate that, he has the ability to do that and still do the rest of his job and the rest of his job with us. And really, and that's it. I mean, so we're able to create a deliverable at the end instead of just something that we can kick around. But is, particularly if it was going to be something that required a significant staff or financial commitment, that we then have to spend a bunch of time trying to figure out how we're going to access those resources. So I'm not saying we shouldn't conclude that we want to pursue something that might have some financial and other resources, but I think we just need to identify that as a factor in the decision-making. Any thoughts on that, Ben?
Maybe not so much a thought on that, but as you were talking, I just had a different perspective of this conversation pop into my head. We've heard a lot of people talk about what does the council need, what does the city need, but that's not why we're here. In my perspective, we're here to serve the business community. And I think we really need to be thinking about this conversation in terms of what does the business community need, and then how does that intersect with how the government plays into that role, in the city government in this case. So, I mean, maybe that's just a different way to think about this, of like, our work plan to me should reflect the needs of the business community as well as the needs of the city. Like, I don't want to ignore that, I don't want to put the city council over there or anything like that, but I think our charge is to support the business community and how that connects to the government, how the government can facilitate and support that growth and healthy economy. So maybe we need to spend some time reflecting over the next week or two before our retreat here as to what the business community needs, and that should, I think, more so inform our work plan than say what council needs.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking along similar lines and thinking that this group is a different perspective from other parts of the city. It is representing business, and whereas a lot of council work represents the residents, and is kind of heavily focused on that, not to the exclusion of business, but there's a lot of expertise in this room that is valuable from the business point of view. And so I agree with what Ben said. I think that we don't want to lose that and just focus on something that is coming from the council or that takes that perspective or ignores that perspective.
And Ben, I agree. I think to your point, there's a tension between wanting to get something done this year or something outcome-based and which is, to me, feels a little bit transactional as opposed to visionary and positioning ourselves with where we want to go. So I think that's a healthy conversation to have. Like, what business is changing? We just talked about this with the real estate changes, restaurant changes, retail, et cetera. So how are we understanding and getting ahead of that to best support and anticipate what's coming?
You were going to say something, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to offer, I think it would be a really neat activity to do like a trend analysis and really get aligned on what is impacting the business community, right? Because I think we all sort of float out our anecdotals and our, I talked to so-and-so, or I see this, or, but to really solidify, these are the political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental trends that we see are going to impact Portsmouth businesses in the next 3 to 5 years. So given that, here's what we can commit to in the next year, right? So I think I guess what I keep missing is what are we grounding in, right? And so like I think the grounding part needs to happen before we can determine what the initiatives are. And so yeah, grounding in the needs of the business community and what all is coming at us, I think could be a good place to start. So I'm almost wondering if maybe looking at piecing together an activity that we could do is to piece together the sort of like trend analysis and align on how we see it. That way we can have something that we can actually do something with.
I think a piece of that was the David Choate's presentation in our meeting at Pease, and how he talked about trends, but I think you're talking about something even a little broader than that. Those were real estate trends.
You're talking more like a SWOT analysis for businesses.
A PESTLE, like an external PESTLE analysis. So political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. How do we look at all these lenses? How do we use each of these lenses to look at the things that are going to impact the business community? SWOT analysis would be more about the current state of how we operate. But a PESTLE trend analysis helps us think about, like it's that whole piece of, Wayne Gretzky said, don't go where the puck's going. Don't go where the puck is, go where the puck's going, right? Ice hockey. So, like, are we all aligned on where the puck's going? I don't feel like we are. Personally, that's just me, that's just my observation as a member. I think we all have different perspectives of where the pucks are going. And I think if we could align on what the business community is telling us where the puck's going, then we can maybe get more laser focused. Like I agree. I think throwing spaghetti at a wall might, like I would love to see us go from a bazooka to a laser. I'm not saying this is our facilitator. I'm saying this is a member of the commission, right? So how can we get laser focused on what our community needs and how we serve them?
So you'd like to have all of these trends in those categories by January 24th.
I would like for us as an activity to figure out
where does that come from? I'm looking at Sean.
I'm sure you are.
Like where would
Sorry.
hundreds of business owners, how would we poll all of them between now and January?
Well, we've started to do that with
had a survey.
Business Retention and Expansion Program,
Okay.
which is ongoing, and we can, if we further develop that, then we will get feedback from more businesses in the community. So
As a kickstart, that data is still relevant. As a getting ready for this retreat, the data that was in the BRE that Bob just mentioned is still relevant.
Still relevant.
Yeah, it's still. It's not fresh,
So maybe that's one of the
right?
starting points.
But it's relevant. Yeah.
And you're going to see the same things in there that we have already.
Yeah.
We keep sort of circling and then anchoring on
Yeah.
the same stuff. Is this the right stuff? And I wonder if it's
Yeah.
that we're not focused on the right topics or that we don't feel like we can be effective in influencing those targets.
All the spaghetti we threw at the wall last year impacted businesses.
Yeah, so maybe we send out the
Everything.
BRE again.
It's all connected.
We won't have the results of the BRA by the January
Right.
24th.
No, but we
In
can send the
fact,
previous information.
But we could look at the old.
Yeah, so we'll
Most
get
recent
the
one.
last results. I'll include that with the
Okay.
list of items.
That would be great.
It's the last,
We
like,
probably are
comments
due
page.
to update that anyways, because it's been a couple of years since we've had it, but that is a process that takes 3 or 4 months
Right.
to circulate the questions, get them updated, you know, then send it out, wait for the results. I mean, I think we probably do want to do it, but I don't think we're going to have anything new. So the question.
What's already in place would be a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think that
Would
what
give
Sarah
us
is saying,
that.
you're going to find the same issues over and
Right.
over again. So, do you have any resources along those lines, Ben, and available to you that?
Not specific to Portsmouth. I mean, I think a lot of this information exists from a state kind of level, and there's probably some things you can put in there, but nothing specific to even the seacoast. That I can think of off the top of my head. Think about it some more.
I think we also spent some time, I can't remember which retreat, was talking about the things that we had the ability to influence as opposed to the ones that were informing us. So understanding what our tools are, was that 2 years ago?
Yeah.
May also
I
be
think
helpful.
that was maybe what in part led to the change in the ordinance discussion.
I'll dig through all my notes and share them with Sean for what we have. I don't want to have everyone suffer from information like analysis paralysis, but we do have some information from previous years, so we don't repeat it or we can reuse it.
John, I might just suggest as facilitator, part of what you and Ben covered, in skating where the puck is going, being reflective, understanding what changed since the last BRE data. I think that's probably a key part of how we move forward. I think that'll come out of the discussion. But understanding, if we were to look at some of the anecdotal information we have, what data do we need to flush out if there is, a cost issue or what might prevent backfilling of some of those spaces and other broader trends. I think kind of taking a step back, looking at other communities that maybe have been on the forefront. If we don't feel like we've been on the cutting edge, who has that been? That might be part of something we set for a priority for 25, getting out and understanding what's going well or not in other markets so that we are where the puck is going. If we are reflective on our sustainability, and I know one of our working groups that's in place, harnessing that group's energy, I think that's something that we'd want to, that could easily come out of that discussion, but making sure that's a key focus.
Other thoughts?
I was thinking about Sean. Do you have a plan for 2025, Sean? Like, it seems like Sean is, has his finger on the pulse of that economic development and what businesses want. So I want to make sure we include those perspectives as well. I always envisioned us as the extension of his
Yeah,
non-department.
I certainly have some big rocks, some priorities starting 2025, but I think, understanding what the EDC is going to focus on, that this is an extension of, this is additional capacity for my office, right?
That's right.
Yes. So, the CRM was a big one. I think what we're going to find, my expectation is we start opening up the lines of communication and businesses are communicating directly with my office and then with the EDC. That's going to be an opportunity to crystallize. We know the big issues, right? I mentioned it this morning. Workforce, childcare issue has not been solved. Housing, affordable housing, costs of doing business. None of these things have changed. These are the big things. We're fortunate in Portsmouth because we have a very diverse economy. If we were a different city or town, we'd be really up against it. But what are the levers? What are the levers we can pull? And I want to go back to Councilor Lombardi's comments and the ordinance. I think the City Council depends on the EDC to bring information and to champion issues. because I think that's an expectation, correct me if I'm wrong. And I think the ordinance aligns with that, where it allows the group to choose priorities and dig into them and then make recommendations to the city council. So I think all that infrastructure is in place. Yeah, so that's, the big goal with me right now is being able to communicate directly with businesses, and I know that that's a city council issue. It's been the city council issue for 3 years. It continues to be, and there's a lot of value in that. I look at the way the chamber communicates with members, and it's very fruitful because it allows Ben and his team to really focus on
Real data.
yeah, and tangible initiatives, which then they can measure. So if my office was doing the same thing, that would be great.
So I'm not so sure how we resolve things, because what I'm hearing is, I totally agree with Ben's approach, which is that, I don't think we're representing the business community, but I think our function is to make sure that the decision makers in the city are aware of how their decisions impact on the business community and the economy as a whole, and to bring initiatives to them which will advance those interests, to at least solve the problems that confront the business community. I think we all know what the big trends are, and you've just listed most of them. I'm concerned about getting involved in some type of overthink on this before we get there, or we don't take any action for fear that we haven't assessed what's out there enough. If I asked you, Ben, what would the chamber like to see city government do in Portsmouth to advance the business community? Would you say, okay, I have this sheet that I keep on a corner of my desk. This is what I'd like you to do. You probably don't have that, right?
It's not written down. But I think it's always the question is, like, what is the role of the government, right? This was a debate. I forget what group I was part of, but we were talking about EV chargers, and I think we were in this room, and there was a lot of debate about, is it the role of the government to provide EV chargers in our community, right? Like, we don't provide gas stations, why are we providing EV chargers? Shouldn't that be a priority? So, there's always like this back and forth as to like what the role of the government is. I think the way I've heard the city manager and Sean describe it is the framework and the platform to do what needs to be done from the private sector, so that not being in the way, providing that base of support so that things can happen. So, maybe there is things that we need to think about. Like, is there a way the city could provide a better framework or structure for more childcare to exist in our community? I don't know the answer to that question, but maybe there is something that could be done. That's something we could maybe look at. Is there? And that's a primarily a workforce issue, I think. I don't know what the city could do there, but, that's something that could be explored. So there are those issues, and I know the city's doing great work on housing. That's obviously a critical thing. City's doing great work, particularly at the high school level with the CTE programs, supporting workforce. I think we all know how great those programs are. So, I think a lot of things are happening. Is there more to be done? Probably, and I'd have to give a little bit more thought to that to come up with something intelligent to say.
I think to that point, we don't want to get stale. We want to make sure that we as a city are fully understanding what people need and what, to your point, we can do to impact that. Community campus was a good example. It was an opportunity to, I'll say, land bank and a really important piece of property in the city, but also to retain some nonprofit tenants. I keep looking at Andy because he's familiar with Seacoast Community School. But if that's the role we played in that situation, great. But worth delving into. I don't want to get stale. I want to keep the city evolving as a thought leader and a helper in this effort.
All right, well, do you have enough to put together the survey? All right, well, so what I've definitely will do is, I'll make sure we all get our current ordinance, which lays out, our mission and the roles that we can play. The last version of the city council goals, the big picture goals, and the last survey results, which are going to be like 2 years old at this point, from the business community on what they identified as the issues. Anything else you can think of? All right. Well, if you do think of something, then we can always add that into the last.
You say you're sending out our mission statement?
Yeah, it's
Because that EDC mission statement is pretty succinct. It basically says we're here to promote or help the city
Yeah.
by promoting businesses, basically.
I think the ordinance is the key, right? The new ordinance
we
language.
incorporated that into the redraft of the
Right,
ordinance. So I'm gonna send out the new, the 2023 version of the ordinance.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
I'll just say, Mr. Chair, if you have pre-work you'd like me to send out, if you have a pre-work survey or whatever, just let me know and I can just get it to me and I'll get it out ASAP.
Great. All right. Well, hopefully they'll all come together.
Can we just reconfirm the date and time?
Yeah, the
retreat?
date is Friday, the 24th, 11 to 2 at the Levinson Room in the public library. Hopefully you'll have all have that in your calendar.
I think that means we'll commit to feeding people, so if you have any food preferences, let Sean and me know. Thanks.
Where will you access it? Or where are you going to get the food?
I don't know.
Like-
Lifetime away, Tom, I don't know. Somewhere from the city.
Okay, all right. Well, but we're
I think
just,
we need a survey.
yeah,
That's the first thing that someone always asks.
we have any celiac here, but all
If I
right.
don't hear from people, we'll
Everybody gets
Sean and I will
pizza
have a
if
good
there's
time.
Peanut butter sandwiches.
Okay, all right. Well, that's all I have on the planning, unless anybody else has some thoughts you want to share before we close out the meeting.
Yeah, next one.
All right, Everett.
Just one other thought, and I missed last year's meeting, so I apologize, but it's amazing, I hate to think I've been on the commission for 24 years, I think it's 24 years, so I'll be sunsetting here very quickly, just for in case anyone has any concern. But once again, we will be back, I think, talking about another parking garage, potentially. I know it's been talked about apparently at the city council. And, this group spent an awful lot of time, and probably Sean's predecessor, and so we have an awful lot of information relative to that. And we have, there were various reports and studies done, and so, I would think once again that I thought we provided a lot of guidance to the city in terms of direction and vetting sites, et cetera. So as we go down the road again, I'd love to think that EDC could provide a lot of value there. And I kind of compare and contrast that with the federal building and where it was going to go and what was going to happen. And I think it was maybe because that was going to get fast-tracked at the time because of various and sundry deadlines, and EDC was not part of that process at all. So we were left out of that, and I think we could have added some real value there. So as we move forward, I'd like to think that we could play an important role, at the very least, as it relates to the parking garage, or proposed tentative parking garage.
Yeah, well, it does. A thought that I've had before is how, and that was like a 5, 6, 7, 8 year project, that parking
10,
garage.
probably 10 plus.
And so that's,
It was 24
Yeah,
years.
yeah, exactly, that's all we did.
yeah. Well, and so that, so that's an example where the EDC had a clear focus, and it knew the outcome it wanted, and the the city thought that the EDC's role was important, almost as a spokesperson for the project. And so we don't have one of those right now. Now, we may, I mean, what you're looking 5 years out for the study money and that type of thing that was in the...
Study's going to say in the years 8 through 10 or 5 through 8.
Yeah, so presumably, if any of us are still on the EDC, then...
I won't be, by the way.
Yeah, there'll be, but it's a good example of how, you know, when you have a multi-year project that is very specific, that it, you know, you can stay razor focused on getting to an end. But we still have another role, which is, as you say, as an advisor to the city council and to, you know, alerting the city council on opportunities. I mean, if, you know, if we, well, I'm just speculating, but we're in one of those periods of time in which we don't have a large laser-focused project in front of us, unless you can all come up with one in about 3 weeks, so. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's Phil, and who seconded?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you all.